Welcome to the WhizzbangBAM podcast. I'm Adam Barraclaw, and this is John Haywood. John, what are your bona fides, man? Tell me who you are and where you're from.
I'm John Haywood. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Born and raised. Lived there for a good part of my life. I lived in Louisville for a while. Play the banjo. In the words of an old mentor, I play the banjo, dance, sing, and tell lies, and not necessarily in that order. And I paint pictures and sometimes. So.
So you are playing on the album, Tyler Childers' "Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven"?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I'm on 2 tracks.
Okay.
I play the banjo on 2 coats, and I also play the banjo on the song Jubilee, and I do the vocals on 2 coats on the Jubilee version. Is that the second one? The second one, and whichever one, the one that Charlie Brown remastered,
Joyful Noise,
remixed. I do the lining out part of it, where I say 2 coats before me, an old and a new. That's an old regular Baptist song. I grew up in an old regular Baptist church where they didn't believe in musical instruments.
Okay.
They just lined out the songs and kind of like a call and response type singing, and that's what was the inspiration for that song. Only it's got, obviously music on it.
Right.
I used to follow my papaw, and I spent a lot of time with him growing up, and he was hardcore about that sort of thing. He was the guy they would call to come and sing at a funeral or something like that.
Right.
And when I die, I think I want them to do my funeral too. My mentor, Lee Boy Sexton, the great banjo player known the world over, when he passed away, that's what he wanted at his funeral, was that no instruments, call and response, old regular Baptist singing is what they call it.
Well, that'd be a beautiful way to go, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about your band.
I have a rock and roll band. It's called Appalachitari. We're kind of a heavy metal. I refer to us as like a vintage heavy metal band. Really, we're kind of a mountain blues kind of metal band at heart, I guess you could say.
Nice.
I grew up playing heavy metal music, in spite of being surrounded by, the old regular Baptist church, and being from Eastern Kentucky, you're surrounded by a lot of the bluegrass and the old time music. And for me as a kid growing up, that was just something to kind of rebel against.
Right. Yeah.
It was, I guess you kind of look. I don't want to say it's the status quo or whatever, but it was like, the accepted music, more or less, country. I got told so many times, why didn't I play some pretty country music, But, I did have to learn that old stuff. I had a cousin up the road that, in order to teach me to play guitar, I had to learn traditional music. Cripple Creek, Old Joe Clark, all those tunes that you're just like, man, can we just get to rocking now, But you don't realize as a kid that you're really getting kind of a good foundation that way.
It's weird when you come back to it and you have a new appreciation for it.
Yeah.
And you see the way, and I feel like maybe this is a theme of the album, that you see the way that it impacts people's lives in a positive way, that when you're a kid, you are rebelling against it.
Yeah.
It is the status quo. You don't want to spend your Sunday in church,
Yeah.
But being a metal guy, in the middle of all that in your community, were you an outsider?
Yeah, totally. Yeah? I mean, when in the 80s, if you're in the middle in the 80s in Eastern Kentucky, you were a loner. We didn't have internet. We didn't have ways to connect a lot of times. I had a small group of friends in school that were also into heavy metal and other types of music, and I thank God for them that we picked up guitars and started playing, and we made the best of our situation. We always felt deprived being from Eastern Kentucky and wanting to play metal because, there wasn't any places to play. It was, and Lord, if someone was sick and couldn't play, you're hard pressed to find like another drummer or a bass player or something. It's so it was, but we did it and we had a lot of fun. I have a lot of great memories of our DIY shows that we would do at community centers and places like that. And
one of the things that I love about metal, and it's a big focus of the shop, I'm sure you saw when you were looking around, is that it has its own community. And like you meet people at those shows, they'll be your friends for life.
Oh, totally.
And they'll tell you about stuff you didn't know about. You'll tell them about stuff they didn't know about. And it's just a way of sharing something that is special to you, but also kind of hidden from the world in a lot of ways, especially back then.
Oh, yeah, totally. I can remember this one show. It was 1994, and I was in this band. We were kind of an early death metal-ish band called Bleeder.
Okay.
And we had this big show at a park, and there was a guy who put out a newsletter that was from Virginia, and his band was going to play. I was kind of a young guy. I was 16, and these guys were all out of high school, and had started traveling, making a few connections. And I remember meeting people at that one show in 94 that I was like, where did these come from? From all over the place, and they were close too. And then when that was over, where did they go? And what's crazy is recently, I'm a tattoo artist, and because of the flood, I've been tattooing over in Pikeville, and a guy that works there, I was talking about it, and then he was like, I was there.
Wow.
I was like, well, that was pretty cool. You were there, and he could even. There's a video of it online, like an old VHS recording.
I'll look it up.
It's pretty cool.
I think that's another thing too about Appalachia is that old saying of "it's a small world." There's 1, maybe 2 degrees of separation between anybody around here.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like I'm surprised today is the first day I've met you.
Right. Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. Here we are. Yeah. Here we are. The banjo and the old time music is like that too. I've spent a lot of time, and that's its own scene as well. And the metal, the two scenes, it's interesting how different they are, but yet how similar they are. Whereas the old time scene is based a lot on like all these people knowing like common tunes and kind of getting together and playing, just like jamming. With heavy metal, there's not a lot of that. It's a lot of, you're working on your band, which I like that too. And I like the old time music for that reason, that you're not necessarily like playing in a band. Yeah. You're just playing music.
You're playing your instrument.
Yeah. My funnest times playing old time music is on a porch with some friends. Some moonshine or something like that.
You may know Gino Seal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually just met him.
Okay,
but I knew him online, but I just met him recently.
Yeah,
in
good
person.
guy. I had told him once that he played front porch gospel.
Yeah.
And he liked that.
Yeah.
And that's what that scene reminds me of too, is that coming together and everybody plays their part, and you got a feature, but it's about everybody sharing it.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
And it's a deep well of music too, especially where I'm from. If you're from the mountains, this music runs pretty deep.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of old fellers that have tons of great stuff to show you and to learn from that and be inspired by. And, being a young metal kid, hanging around all these old dudes from the head of the holler, playing this, what I call this dark holler music, I'm hearing metal riffs in my head. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't really think about it at the time. At the time I was, and I still am, when it comes to old time music, concerned about preservation of culture.
Right.
Like, this is our music that we have carried on and passed down for years and years, and it's got to continue to go as it is, in a traditional sense. But also, there's just so much to learn from it and to kind of just draw from in the way that early rock musicians did from the old blues guitar players. And for me, I got re-inspired, to play rock and roll music again.
Nice.
And you know, you get these old tunes in your head and how they're arranged, and I just sort of start with thinking on one of those old tunes, and then just pick up a guitar and sort of, you know, it's almost like having a reference, a little bit of a reference to write to, in a way, which I think if you write songs or make up riffs or anything, you kind of do that anyway. You hear a song you like, and you say, I want to make a song that's kind of like that.
Right.
You know, but metal people aren't listening to fiddle and banjo music and being like, man, I want to make a metal song that reminds me of that song, you know?
Oh, I think they should, though. Like, there's so much speed in banjo. Like, if you're playing metal, if you appreciate metal, it's hard not to at least recognize the talent there. Oh,
totally.
Yeah.
And all my guitar heroes growing up, you know, Kirk Hammett, Dimebag Darrell, you know, when I was a kid, and Randy Rhoads, you know, they were into other forms of music. You know, they were, you know, Randy Rhoads appreciated classical music. He had elements of that in his playing. You know, all these guys, you know, they would, I would go to the store. My mom would grocery shop, and I'd hang out the magazines. You know what I mean? I'd be like, just digesting everything metal I could. You know, you had Metal Edge, you had Rip, you had Hip Raiders. I forget, you know, and then they had Guitar World.
Yep.
And I'd just be reading these guitar.
Oh man, pre-internet, that was all we had. Yeah. That's how you found out about new stuff. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, I'd just be reading these lessons. You know, and I remember, you know, Kirk Hammett had a column in one of them. Dimebag Darrell had he wasn't allowed to be called Dimebag Darrell in those days. He had to call himself Diamond Darrell. I don't know if you were old enough to remember that stuff. And yeah, it would be like Diamond Darrell. And then one day I remember he finally came out and was like, you know, really, my name's not Diamond Darrell, it's Dimebag Darrell. I can remember reading that and being like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and that's definitely something that's changed these days.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, man, you mentioned the flood. And I wanted to talk to you about that just briefly. You know, I know a lot of folks that I care about were impacted by that, and I wanted to see, you know, how you're doing and, you know, what things are like now for you, and if there's anything, you know, we can do to help or anything like that you want to shout out.
It's a tough question. You know, there's been a lot of folks that's came to help. You know, there's a lot of folks without homes. Yeah. There's still folks camping out at Fish Pond Lake. My Russ Griswold was Russ Wright, who I also play music with, who was actually the former bass player of Appalachiatari, lost his house, and he's still, you know, staying at a friend's place. Yeah. I was lucky; it didn't get in my house. It just kind of destroyed our driveway a little bit, you know, which, you know, that's minimal.
Right.
You know, our band rehearsal space got hit really hard. I lost an amplifier. Russ lost a big, huge bass cab. We lost a lot of recording equipment. The shop, I own a tattoo shop in Whitesburg. We got 6 inches of water in it, enough to have to move out, move everything out, and kind of wait and see how the landlords are what they're gonna do to the building. We're on the middle story, so the bottom story was totally underwater. But I'm making the best of it because I can, there's a town not far away, Pikeville. I can go there and work, and tattoo. I also have a temporary private spot, it's kind of a hush, like
speakeasy.
Yeah, it's like a speakeasy, like tattoo club kind of place that's set up, you know, it's, and, you know, like I said, I'm trying to make the best of it, and I'm trying to look at this as like, you know, I used to read about all the guys that tattooed in states when it was illegal. Yeah. You know, and they had to have these little private spots. Nobody knew where they was at. You know,
only people you trust.
Yeah, only people you trust. So I kind of got one of those little things going on.
Okay,
and,
all right. Well, hit John up. Yeah. Thank you for sitting down with me, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Can't wait to see you play tonight.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I'm pumped.
All right.
Excited.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you.